You're listening to a Brain Stew Fresh Fright Review.
What's up, creeps, and welcome to another brand new Epic Film Guys Fresh Fright Review. I'm Justin.
I'm Jeremy.
This week on the show, we're talking about a little movie, a tiny little movie with a monstrous main character that everybody is talking about right now, taking the United States by storm, Godzilla Minus One. Motherfucker, this is a massive movie. We just could not pass up the chance to talk about it. Jeremy, I didn't even know you were going to see it, and you reached out to me, I think, this last weekend, and you were like, dude, I'm seeing fucking Godzilla, and I was like, we have to review it. You know, I mean, I know you're not the biggest Godzilla guy. I'm a fan, but I'm by no means an expert or anything like that. But this movie right now, as of this recording, has broken some records. As of this last Monday, it was #1 at the box office, and that's the first time a Japanese-made film has been #1 at the box office in 19 years. As of right this moment, it has overtaken Oppenheimer as the highest-rated movie by fans on IMDb. I mean, this thing is just, like, blowing up. It was supposed to be a very small, like, 1-week engagement at the theater, IMAX, you know, special event cinemas in large format. And now they're actually extending its stay to December 14th.
As they should.
Yeah, as they should. So dude, I got to ask you first and foremost, we'll get into the movie itself, but you not being the biggest Godzilla guy, what drew you to saying, like, I have to see this movie?
Yeah, I generally am kind of meh on Godzilla typically. Like, I've seen, you know, the past several American, like the Gareth Evans one, and different people. That was his name, right? Gareth Evans?
Gareth Edwards.
Edwards, yeah, there you go. Gareth E, there you go.
The Monsterverse.
Yeah, I saw the one with Bryan Cranston, and I've seen the Godzilla and King Kong movies and shit like that, and I've seen some other Godzilla films as well, but I've never been blown away by one of these films and gone, man, I love this thing. It's
not even the 1998 Roland Emmerich movie,
dude,
with Matthew Broderick.
I've tried. I've never been able to even get through that one, and I've tried several times. It's. I mean, to each their own. I know that these movies are, they have like hardcore fans, and I've never been a Godzilla opposer. You know what I mean? Like I've never been like, oh fuck those movies. They've just not my cup of tea typically. Like they just don't.
Yeah, like monsters though. You like.
I love Cloverfield, which is like basically like, here's what would happen in New York City if a Godzilla type creature came through, right? I love Cloverfield like so much, but Godzilla has just never done it for me. And much like Terrifier 2 last year, I had no plans on going to see Godzilla Minus One. Same way that I had no plans to go see Terrifier 2. But word of mouth. People were just singing praise of this thing, that this is the scariest version of the character ever, that it's more in line with a horror film than, a popcorn, big budget monster that's destroying a town. Like, the reviews is that this thing was stellar and unbelievable and unlike any Godzilla movie ever. Hearing that they made the character truly terrifying is honestly, and people just saying how much it blew them away, is honestly why I went to go see it. Because for me, the Godzilla films that I've seen, and I've seen a handful of them, it's always just big monster, attacking. To where for me, it's never been scary. It's never been like, holy fuck.
Yeah, I totally get your point, man. I mean, I think as someone that's seen quite a few, and I'm a big fan of Gareth's Godzilla movie, in terms of how the character is depicted. There's some scary stuff there, but I've never either seen a Godzilla movie where I was legitimately terrified in the way that I was when I watched this version of the character. And they went out of their way. We'll get into that they went specifically out of their way. Like, listen, there's been cute Godzilla, there's been fun Godzilla, there's been heroic Godzilla. We need to get back to like what this thing originally meant, and what it originally meant was terror. Absolute fucking terror. Like when audiences watched the original in the 50s, it was like this was a extremely horrific thing for them to view. It blew audiences away. And then of course we Americanized it and blah 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 blah, and history is history. We're not going to do a history lesson on Godzilla, maybe another time.
I don't think either one of us are accredited enough in Godzilla to do that.
I haven't done my fucking homework here. Listen, my dog ate it. So but talking about this one though, it's insane to see how well it's doing. So I already anticipated on seeing this, working at Alamo Drafthouse. I knew we would be screening it, but I wanted to see it a day early at the fan event. Did not want to travel super far, so I actually went and saw something called in a cinema called Screen X by Regal. Have you ever heard of Screen X before?
No, never.
So Screen X is where the both sides, your right and left side of the theater, have screens on it, and the front. So it's like all the way around you almost. And I was hoping it would be cool because I love, for me, large format theaters like IMAX, Dolby and shit. I'm all about it. This felt more gimmicky. I mean, you saw some cool stuff, like especially a lot of the movie takes place on the water. You'd see water on both sides of you and stuff, but I felt like it was more of a distraction than anything that added to the experience of the film itself.
Sure.
And it never totally lined up with the screen in the middle, so it was kind of strange. So if you're, ladies and gentlemen, if you're going to think about going to check it out, maybe it's for you. It wasn't for me. It was a one and done. But I went to that because that was the closest thing to me, because where I live currently, our local Alamo in Winchester that I don't work at does not have a large format theater. And I'm like, I want to hear and see Godzilla on the biggest thing I possibly can. So that's what I did. I saw it at a Screen X, and I was, definitely not disappointed in the experience overall, because I got to see the movie. There was probably 7 other people in the theater, which is why I'm so surprised that it's doing so well. But at the same time, I'm not, because the movie's so fucking good. And like you said, by the time I talked to you about it, it had been 3 days since I'd seen it, and word of mouth had grew and grew. And especially on Twitter. I mean, I tweeted about it 2 hours after I saw it. My tweet the following day almost had 1,000 likes on it that quickly, and you could see that people were just building up hype for this thing. And again, it deserves it. It's by far one of the best movies of the year, and technically we review mostly horror, and I'm sure you would agree that this falls in line with that category enough for us to cover it. I mean, it's a fucking monster movie.
I mean, to me, this is absolutely a horror film, and if anything, honestly, Japan's answer to Jaws. Honestly, there's so many Jaws homages in this movie.
Dude, 100%. Director Takashi Yamazaki had said in interviews that Jaws was aside from a couple other, certain installments of Godzilla films that he loved, Jaws was one of his biggest inspirations. So to me, I kind of viewed this almost like it felt like Dunkirk, like a Christopher Nolan war movie, but with a giant monster.
Dude.
Because it was done in the most realistic fashion possible, where that shit felt really real and it was scary within the moment, like you were actually there experiencing it.
For sure. I mean, like I said, this thing to me really is a horror film, because we're witnessing a giant monster just ravage people and massacre entire towns and places and people. The plot of this movie is post-war Japan is at its lowest point when a new crisis emerges in the form of a giant monster baptized in the horrific power of the atomic bomb.
You beat me on that IMDb description.
I sure did. I sure did.
And of course, this is post-World War II. So the movie has political stuff to say, and I'm glad that it does. I mean, Godzilla was birthed originally in the 50s as a response to the war, and being, try to say this lightly, but a giant bomb being dropped on Japan. And this movie actually deals with it firsthand. But the movie follows our main character here and Kiyoshi. And he's a former kamikaze pilot. And the first time we meet this character, he is like trying to get away from duty. Like he doesn't want to
die.
He doesn't want to die. He doesn't want to end his own life. In Japan, we know honor is a huge thing. But what he does is he lands his plane on Odo Island where, he's basically saying there's something wrong with his plane. He needs it to be repaired. Just stalling, not knowing what to do, as any normal person would. I mean, when you think about what kamikaze pilots were required to do back then, I mean, you're basically just told go kill yourself.
Yep.
Your duty is to go
die.
End your own life
in a blaze of glory, literally.
Yeah, and I know, as I said, the Japanese have a huge thing for honor, which I respect. But back then, it was a terrifying thing to deal with. So he lands here. And they tell him, like, we can't figure out what's wrong with your plane at all. And they start, catching the drift that, there's nothing wrong with it.
Yep.
And that night, a dinosaur-like creature, Godzilla, attacks the island, which there's already this lore. There's this mystique. There's this legend of Godzilla that the islanders they've mentioned. So they've already been told about this thing. And what I love about this, Jeremy, is I don't remember the last Godzilla movie that I saw, or if I have, where we see the character actually grow.
Right.
So in the beginning scene here, that takes place 1945 during the World War II, rather, he's almost the size of like a large T-Rex, or a little bit bigger than that.
Exact perfect example, dude, because I was going to say he was roughly the size of a fucking T-Rex. And man, that first scene with Godzilla was absolutely terrifying because it was at night and it was the way that they lit Godzilla, and they really, like, dude, the shadows at nighttime really amplified the horrific introduction of this character in this movie. I absolutely loved it. Honestly, it's my favorite scene in the entire movie.
I had a feeling that it would be. But I was taken aback because also, I had no clue what I was in for. I saw a few blurbs about the movie before I watched it, but I did not read any reviews. I only saw the one trailer, and I didn't expect to see him that soon. I was like, holy shit, we're seeing Godzilla already. But I was like, oh man, he's like small. He's like very agile, and like, he just fucking shit up on that island. And I think, we already have this character that's questioning his decisions because he's basically evading duty, which is dishonorable, and he's landing here, and there's a moment where the rest of the soldiers
by the way, this is spoiler. spoiler 100%.
Thank you, Jeremy. Thank you because anyone that listens to this, you need to go see the movie right now if you have the chance.
Right fucking now, god damn it.
Right goddamn now. But so we have this moment where Kiyoshi is given this opportunity, like, yo, listen, jump in your plane, dude. You have the most powerful weapon on this island in your plane. And he jumps in the plane, and you as an audience member, you're like, okay, shoot Godzilla. Even though you love Godzilla, you're like, Godzilla's badass. You want to see him shoot him. He does not shoot. And you're like, why isn't he shooting Godzilla?
Because he even said, his character even said, what if it doesn't work? What if it just makes it angrier?
Yeah.
And so he's already, struggled with the fact he's like, I don't want to be a kamikaze pilot because I don't want to fucking die. He's got parents at home that he wants to get back to. He's got family that he loves. So the other characters on this island are like urging him, go. Like, you're the only one who's qualified to shoot that gun. Go. So he runs and he gets in the fighter jet, and he's got the gun pointed at Godzilla perfectly, but he won't take the shot in fear that it will result in his own death because it's not going to work against this ginormous monster.
So once again, not only questioning himself, but just a scared person. And I mean, this is a natural thing to feel. is that fear, like especially thinking about, taking your own life for maybe a war you don't even necessarily believe in. And then, of course, here we have a situation where, like, well, what if I shoot this fucking thing and he literally just stomps me? Like, I mean, the scene is handled fairly realistically because they're reacting like they've never seen anything like this before.
Right.
And if you actually did see something like this in front of you, how would you react? You'd be like, dude, I swear to God, I'd probably pass out. I would legitimately probably just, Oh,
I'd die. I'd die right there. My heart would stop. Like, that's it. I'm out.
So we see that Godzilla basically ends the life of every single person on this island except for Kiyoshi, and then we have the main mechanic on the island, which we see later in the movie. We'll get to that. And when Kiyoshi goes back to Japan, after the war is over, he's mistreated. And
everybody hates him. They're like, wait a minute. You were a kamikaze pilot. What are you doing here? And then people immediately know you fucking chickened out. Like, you abandoned your duty. So, I mean, like, people are... He's got a neighbor that just absolutely fucking hates him. Sumiko, his neighbor, that's like, you fucking chicken. Like, you didn't do your job. And because you didn't do your job, our town is destroyed.
Yeah. And the one thing I have to say right off the bat in terms of the presentation of this era is it was done absolutely perfectly. Everyone's look in terms of their facial, everything, like the clothing, the costumes, the location, it all felt so legitimate. It all felt so genuine. I literally felt like I was there in the 1940s in Japan and experiencing this firsthand, which is something I can't say for any other Godzilla movie that I've ever watched.
Yeah.
Now, granted, this is not, people had asked, on social media, does this connect to Shin Godzilla? Is this a sequel to the original? This actually takes place before the original Godzilla.
Minus One. Is that where the title comes from?
Yeah. But also, I have to say, I've never been a fan of that title. Yeah. It's kind of confusing. But you know what the thing is, though, Jeremy? As you know, from someone that has played in bands and, you know band names and stuff, if a band name is memorable, it doesn't matter if it's stupid or makes sense. Like, people will remember it.
Biscuit.
One of our favorite bands, and there it is. But so this character very quickly is thrown into another situation, where people are scrambling. People just are trying to eat. People are trying to find work, and of course, his home is in shambles. And then he meets this girl who has a baby that she's taken in, and he's kind of stuck with it for a little bit, and they connect, and they end up becoming, I guess, what's the word for it? Like, they're not together, but they're like kind of like...
They're playing house.
Yeah, playing house, like there's no romance there, or, it doesn't seem like...
They both have
really
feelings.
Interested.
Yeah, they both have feelings for each other, but neither one of them are really willing to make a move on that, but yet they're literally playing house together. He's going out and he's providing for the family. He's working to get money because now they have become a family. Even though there's, at this point, no emotional or romantic relationship between them. Kiyoshi is very much playing the father and the husband in this scenario, and he's out and he's earning a living, which, dude, his job that he takes on to get money as he's raising a surrogate daughter and playing house husband to Noriko is, so during the war they had laid these mines, these bombs under the water, and so basically he takes on another dangerous job. So it's like, oh yeah, I'm too afraid to be a kamikaze pilot and die, but now in order to get money in post-war Japan where it's like devastating poverty, now he's going and he's collecting these mines, these bombs out of the ocean.
Yeah. One of the funniest things about that, Jeremy, is that when he explains the job to her, because Noriko was pissed. She's like, what? That's dangerous. And he's like, no, there's no way they would give me this job if it was that dangerous. It's going to be a highly trained vessel of specialists. And then the next scene, he shows up. It's so funny. Everyone laughs because it's like this tiny piece of shit boat all made out of wood. And he's like, what's this? And a bunch of ragtag group of people that look like they're a bunch of misfits.
Dude, can we talk about how the scientist that's working with them to collect the bombs, he looks so much like Data from Goonies now. Like, I don't know if you felt that. I don't know if you felt like that when you were watching it, but it was almost jarring how much he looks like the actor that plays Data from Goonies.
Well, if anything, I have to say his presentation in terms of his look is extremely on the nose. He has that wild, like, super curly hair, the really big, round, like, nerdy doctor glasses and stuff. It felt like a mix of Doc Brown and, but he had comedic wit, though.
He did.
I mean, and the character is written extremely well.
So
That's the thing about this movie that I have to say, because Takashi Yamazaki not only directed it, he wrote the fucking thing, and he wrote it during COVID, which is why there's a lot of parallels there we'll get to.
I would like to say real quick, not only did he write it, but he wrote the fuck out of this movie.
No, man, you're totally correct there. He wrote the fuck out of this thing. I mean, there's a reason why so many people are talking about it and why we're raving about it so far. I think this movie, and I'll give an example. You saw it with a group of people, but I took my wife, Danielle. Y'all listening, that have been listening for a while, you've heard of her name before. She's watched plenty of Godzilla movies with me, but she's never totally connected to it in the way that I have. She walked out of this movie and was like, that's one of my favorite movies that I've watched this year.
Dude.
And that just goes to show. Everyone can watch this thing and relate. She said to me, Jeremy, she turned to me and said, Godzilla looked fucking badass in this.
Terrifying.
And I was like, whoa. Like, if my wife's saying that, I was like, I think this, again, and very much so, it's something that everyone can enjoy and connect with because the characters are relatable. They're well written. They're beautifully performed. They have amazing actors behind them giving great performances. This isn't a silly movie. It's played straight, but there are moments rather of, levity where there's lighter stuff and there's jokes. But
yeah,
in the end, it's pretty serious shit.
Oh, for sure. For sure. It's dark, and I don't know if you said it or if somebody else said it to me in a previous conversation, but this movie was like if Christopher Nolan was given $300 million and told to go make a war movie. And all of a sudden he was like, at the last second was like, I'm going to put a giant monster in this. And everything is played so straight and works so...
That's what I said in the opening of the episode.
So it was done. Dude, I never saw Dunkirk. Is that a Christopher Nolan movie?
Yes.
Oh, there we go.
Yes, it is.
We run a movie podcast. I'm like, Dunkirk was Christopher Nolan. You could tell. Horror movies, action movies, guys. But
yeah, no, it's all good. Yeah, well, no, I mean,
dude,
it's one of his best movies. But no, the way that this was presented, though, to your point, is it felt like that or a Saving Private Ryan
100
or
perfect,
a Black Hawk Down or like a real war movie. Just that there's a monster in it, and I think that's what differentiates this in comparison to everything else we've seen when it comes to Godzilla, because everything else is like Godzilla first, human second. But here we had human characters that we connected with in this situation.
You love.
The war was the backdrop. You love them. You connect with them. You follow them throughout the movie. This is a movie where, you want to see Godzilla fuck shit up, and you do in the biggest way possible. But in the end, you're like, you really care about these characters, and that's how you're watching a good fucking movie.
What I really what I really loved about this movie as well is that they could have jammed Godzilla in our face, down our throats, like it's been done in several of these movies. Going back to the Jaws parallel is...
There it is.
We get Godzilla in the moments of this story where it's just really important and really special, And it's not just monster, 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 human story. Monster, 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 human story. Like a lot of these Godzilla movies. Dude, every single Godzilla scene, and they make you fucking wait for it and work for it and want it so fucking bad. Every Godzilla scene that we get is different and special and unique and terrifying. Man, like,
and when it hits, you're so ready for it. Your anticipation is so high that it blows you out of the water. For example, as you just brought up, Kiyoshi's job is cleaning up mines. And it's a couple years after he originally saw Godzilla in 1945. It's now 1947. And his crew is basically tasked, like they're told, like, you got to stop this thing approaching Japan. And of course, they send out this tiny little fucking mine boat or whatever, waiting for larger vessels to arrive to assist. And they run into Godzilla. And this scene right here is a perfect example of the Jaws influence, because it is one of my favorite scenes of the movie. We have Godzilla poking his fucking head out of the water, and
it looks so scary. Looks so
right now,
scary.
This movie, again, reported budget. I'm sorry, ladies and gentlemen. Reported budget, $15 million. I can't believe that he looks this fucking good on a budget of $15 million. Dude, the scene where they're like...
Wasn't that how much it cost to make Thanksgiving? Was $15 million, if I'm not mistaken?
Thanksgiving cost over 20.
Holy shit.
I'm pretty sure it was like 20.
So Thanksgiving cost more money than Godzilla Minus One.
Again, I'm going by what I'm seeing on the internet. This may be incorrect, but what I'm seeing so far is that the budget for Godzilla Minus One was around $15 million. My point on that is all the Godzilla stuff looks amazing. And this scene in particular, with him coming out of the water and him like gliding behind them and chasing them with his mouth wide open, it looked practical. And there hasn't been any additional interviews with anyone since the movie's come out that I've been able to find in terms of the effects. So I'm led to believe, Jeremy, that all of this was done CG, because that's what they said. They didn't do anything practically. In the old Godzilla movies, you'd always get
some practical shots, yeah.
Guy in a suit. People were pissed that, they found out, you're not even going to give me one, scene with the guy in a suit. There's no guy in a suit in this. But this scene with Godzilla with his mouth open, if I could put it in the episode so people could see it, I would. It looks so fucking real, his teeth and his mouth, that I was so beyond impressed by it. I turned to Danielle. I was like, I can't believe this.
Yeah.
It just looks so fucking real. It looks like a real animal, a real thing coming out of the ocean. And of course, getting back to the scene itself.
You mean they didn't hire a huge fucking monster?
They didn't hire the real Godzilla? They didn't go down to the bottom of the ocean and be like, dude, wake up. We need you for a movie.
Hey, a couple just different takes per scene. You'll be all right.
I mean, just watching the scene, I was just blown out of the fucking water. Of course, they try to put a mine in Godzilla's mouth. They do. They try to see if they can fucking make any dent in him at all. They blow it up in his mouth. They think they're big deal for it because, yeah, we got him. And, of course, it does absolutely nothing but just piss him off.
The atomic regeneration capabilities of Godzilla, very, very rad looking. Let's just say that.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
indestructible.
We see him grow. We see him grow and grow. And of course, when we see him blow up, he's like Wolverine, man. He's like, and the way it looks, the way they designed it to kind of like, you see it's like burning and then like skin grafting over his own scales and shit. It just looked so cool. It was a great visual. We see that throughout the movie. And then, of course, moving on from there's an ongoing theme here where it's like government knows about something, doesn't want to do anything about it. And, early on, Yamazaki had said that he was writing this during the pandemic. To quote him exactly, he said it was right in the middle.
Do you know if he was hired to do this, or was this something that he wrote to pitch?
No, he actually got this job because he did. I'd have to look it up. He did something early on. It was like a Godzilla piece because he was such a big fan or something. I don't have it in front of me, so ladies and gentlemen, you'll have to excuse me. But there was something he pitched because people wanted to see what he would do with Godzilla. I know I'm going to fuck that up, but then it turned into him actually being the next guy to make a Godzilla movie. So yeah, I don't have all the descriptive information in front of me. But yeah, so that's what it was. But so he wrote the movie during COVID-19, and he said it was right in the middle of the pandemic when he first started writing the script. And in those early first few weeks, he had that sense like, hey, the government's not doing anything about this. So this is going to be up to us. So that was the whole attitude in the movie, which I loved. Like, just people, citizens coming together like, you know what? Our government's not going to fucking do anything about this. We're going to take this into our own hands. And this happens much later in the movie. But before we get to that point, you know, we have, I would dare say, the most horrific Godzilla scene in the entire fucking movie. Because shortly after the scene in the water, they know Godzilla is coming back. And we know that Noriko is working in this town. She told Kyochi that she wanted to start working for herself, and he's been doing all the work on his own, and she wanted to help support herself and baby Akiko. And then, of course, Godzilla attacks the town of Ginza, where Noriko works. And this scene for me, Jeremy, was the most horrific of the movie. All taking place during the day, but it's also classic Godzilla where you see tanks trying to neutralize him, and he's at his largest now. He's fucking massive with huge thunder thighs and a huge ass whipping tail. And he kills tens of thousands in this scene. And like you said, spoiler alert, earlier on, we're led to believe during this scene, you know, Kyochi comes in last minute, thinks he's saving Noriko. We get a great sequence here where Godzilla picks up the train that she's in riding home, and he fucking bites right into it, and she's hanging out of it, and he's just like, fuck this thing, and chucks it over to the side, and she ends up escaping. But as Godzilla gets pissed off, he's like, no, fuck this shit, dude. You're going to try to engage me? He builds himself up, and he fires his heat ray, and he decimates the entire town, killing so many people. And, I mean, for me, like, this is the most stoic scene in the movie. You're like, as a fan, like, this is badass, this is cool, but you're like, whoa, emotionally, like, it hits pretty hard. It's pretty serious.
Yeah, it showed his total power in this scene, and it also shows a sense of total hopelessness, because how do you combat that? How do you fight that? And that's when the townspeople go, we're gonna take this into our own hands, and they start devising a plan. And once again, the Jaws parallel. There's a town meeting, and it's like, well, how do we do it, right? Yeah. And it's, basically they want to get They want to get Godzilla. same. They
want to get Bruce the Shark.
Same thing. So they want to get Godzilla basically on this inflatable raft that they'll be able to plummet to the bottom of the ocean so quickly and so rapidly that even though Godzilla came from the bottom of the ocean, the speed that he would travel, they believe, could possibly...
And the pressure,
they think could possibly kill him. So they devise this plan, and then there's a couple backup plans of, if this doesn't work, this is what we're going to do. And it has all of these pieces that everything has to work perfectly, and they still don't know. It's not a definitive, like, here's what we do, and we'll kill the thing. It's kind of like, it should work. It should work. Well...
I have to tell you, man, not to cut you off, but that scene when they have the towns meeting and they grab all the former naval officers and everyone that they could possibly grab to be a part of it, to hear out their deal, in terms of what they were planning on doing. When they all come together at the end of that scene, it gave me goosebumps.
It was awesome.
It was like, it was so fucking, it felt like a huge society coming together to fight for the same purpose.
Yeah.
Common thread. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And I absolutely loved it. And of course we know they're saying like this thing is not 100% like foolproof. We don't know if this is going to work, but this is our only chance to stop this thing.
Yeah.
And we're the only ones that can do it. And of course, a few people walk out, but those that stay, they're like, this isn't a war. This is something we have to do. Yep. We have to do this to survive. And I absolutely loved that aspect of the movie.
Well,
as much as we love the destruction that Godzilla ensues, but, we want these people to live and survive.
So the writing on this movie is just so incredible. So the first scene of the movie, you're left with our hero, Kiyoshi, and the only other person that lived off of Udo Island was Mr. Tachibana.
Yeah, Tachibana, who comes back.
Who he has he knows that, well, we need a specific plane that has specific capabilities in order for me to pull this off if we're going to try to defeat Godzilla. So Tachibana blames Kiyoshi for all the men's death on the island because he never took the shot. So Kiyoshi knew the only way to get Mr. Tachibana to come to where they live and fix the plane the way that it needed to be fixed is if he insulted him.
I love
he
this
sent
scene.
him
I love this
he
scene.
sent him 30 letters, and all 30 letters said, "You're the reason all of those men died," to Mr. Tachibana. So of course he's like, "Oh motherfucker, that was you're the reason.
I'm gonna fuck you up as soon as I see you," which he does.
He does.
Such a great
That was his
scene.
only way to lure him to pitch the idea of like, help us build this plane the way it needs to be built so we can defeat Godzilla, and it works. And there's such emotional gravity there as well, because even though Kiyoshi wants to live, which is the same reason he didn't want to be a kamikaze pilot, it's the same reason he didn't take the shot. This is the layers of the onion that this movie has. And
at this point too, he doesn't, just to be clear, he doesn't know that Noriko is alive.
No, has no idea that Noriko is alive. Spoiler for the end of the movie. But he even though he didn't want to die in those two different scenarios, he has so much survivor's guilt over his parents being killed from Godzilla decimating his town, to the men on Udo Island that got massacred by Godzilla because he never took the shot. So he's got this survivor guilt of like, if I would have shot Godzilla when he was that size, would it have worked? Would it have killed him? And would that have saved my family?
The entire thing.
And would that have saved my family? So even though he wants to live, he also feels like I shouldn't be alive. Like I'm responsible. And there's so much emotional core to this film that goes beyond anything that I expected from a giant monster movie. I loved the scenes with Tachibana and Kiyoshi so much. And when we start getting to this third and final act of this movie, and they're building this plane, and they're devising this plan, and, Kiyoshi has this surrogate daughter that he's just like, fuck, I am gonna most likely have to go and die, even though now I do want to live for her. There's so, and
right,
being a father, like, man, watching these scenes.
It tugs on your heartstrings so hard, especially the way he leaves that note, and then it's heart-wrenching, dude. You connect with it on such a human level. Now he understands, in order for this to work, I have to be the guy. I'm the only guy that can make this happen.
Yep.
When he's talking to Kenji Noda, who he worked with on the boat, who constructed this entire plan, he's like, I don't, and they're all telling him, you don't have to die, but he gets it into his head like, I have to do this. This is my only way to redeem myself, for my family, to have honor in Japan. And then, of course, we'll get to what happens, but all of that like really connected with me on a super deep level.
Yeah,
like this
same.
character that just he had fear, but now he finally overcame everything, and he wants to do whatever he possibly can, humanly possible, in order to make this happen. Of course, he's got Tachibana, who he finally, like you said, he finally convinced to come help. And that's like a hero moment, like a very heroic moment when he comes in together and he walks in the door and he's like, is this the plane? Like, for me, I was like, oh man, like I'm just now my first time introduced to these characters, but I feel like I know them. I'm like, whoa, like you felt like they're your heroes. And so we get this final scene in this third act where, of course, Godzilla resurfaces and he doesn't necessarily go where they think he's going to go. So they have to do a second plan, but it's in a very exciting sequence. It all plays out perfectly, and it's super entertaining. We have him blowing shit up, and the two ships try to haul Godzilla to the surface, but they fail. And then a fleet of tugboats, one of the workers, the guys that didn't get to go to war, who wanted to go to war the entire movie.
That scene was so
funny.
Working
with Kiyoshi and all the other guys on the mine gathering boat, shows up, and it was like a bunch of just regular citizens popping up in their tugboats like, we're here to help. And they end up assisting, and they bring Godzilla to the surface. And now he's fucking mad.
He's kind of frozen. He's like kind of frozen too, because he got plummeted to the bottom of the ocean, and it's like freezing. But he's
preparing to destroy everyone though with this heat ray. Like he's like, I'm fucking ready, dude. I'm gonna destroy everyone. And
I love real quick. I love how he charged up his atomic breath ray, like every spike on his back, like being.
Oh, dude, yeah. And again,
like
we had to bring that up in terms of his design and stuff too. I mean, we've never seen anything like that before, where like all of his dorsal plates just they come out of his back, like they eject, like they move, like that. It was exciting, you know what I mean? It added a different element to the character, where before usually it would just like you'd see him glow up his tail and up his dorsal plates and shit, and then he would like he would do it. But in this movie, like they went like the sound design for that and the visual look to it was so exciting. It added suspense to every single moment where you saw that too. 100%. So of course, we're at the end of the movie, and spoiler alert, Kiyoshi flies into the mouth of Godzilla, and we see a huge explosion. And you're led to be upset and sad because you're like, he's gone. Akiko is without a father and a mother. And then you see Godzilla's head is like decimated.
It's gone. Pile of goo.
But then you see in the sky a parachute. And then, of course, we do see a flashback scene where Tachibana like spoke quietly to him and whispered and put in an ejector seat, which makes total sense because the plane they were using was like this new state-of-the-art thing that hadn't been used yet. It was like a new prototype. So then you're like, oh my God, my hero is alive.
Dude, when Tachibana, I feel like this was the best emotional element of this entire movie. When Tachibana, who blamed Kamiko for everything that's happened initially, he looked him in the eyes when he was explaining that he had made an ejection seat for the jet. And he looked him in the eyes and with all of his heart and all of his soul said, live. Like, you don't have to die. Choose to live. Like, even though you blame yourself for all these things that have happened, it doesn't mean that you have to die. You deserve to live. Bro, so heavy. So heavy. Absolutely, again, was not prepared for the level of layers that this giant monster movie had. It was so emotionally heavy, and I'm so thankful for the the amazing writing in this movie.
Oh yeah, I mean, Yamazaki absolutely knocked it out of the park. I mean, there's so much to say about this, but we will digress for now in terms of for length for the review. But I mean, the movie is perfectly said earlier from you, Jeremy. It's an onion that you peel it back, and there are layers, and there's characters, and there are things to say about politics and social injustice, and all of that put into this little, post-World War II movie with Godzilla. And for me, at least, and I said this in my original blurb, it's the best since the original, and since I've watched this, I need to see it one more time. This may be the best Godzilla movie.
What's wild is I think that this movie has a higher rating than the original Godzilla.
It probably does. It probably does. More people are going to see it, which is great. And of course, in terms of when the movie was made and the technology and all that, I mean, the original's a classic. We wouldn't have what we have now today in terms of monster movies or Godzilla movies without it. But this movie just broke barriers, and I'm so excited to see it doing so well. And then, of course, we have the ending of the movie, which is so heartfelt, where Kyochi receives a telegram, heads to a hospital, and he finds a Kiko, or with a Kiko, and he finds Noriko, and, she actually survived. And as they embrace, we realize by the end of the movie that there's this chunk of Godzilla flesh sinking into the ocean as like a post-credits type thing.
It's kind of already starting to regenerate.
It's starting to regenerate at that point. So, I would be 100% down. Like, I'm all for all things Godzilla. I'll watch, the Monsterverse. I'll watch what Adam Wingard's doing with the new Godzilla Kong thing. I'll watch that. I'll watch this too. If, Toho's happy with what he's doing, I'm sure they are. They loved what he did with this so far.
Yeah.
It's doing extremely well in terms of box office and fan reaction, and critically, massive. As big as Godzilla himself. I'd love to see, Yamazaki take on another one, but he has said himself, give me Star Wars, give me this, I'm ready for anything. So I'm just excited to see where he takes whatever he wants to take in terms of his career as a director and writer. The guy has got a future. He just made one of the best movies of the year and one of my favorite movies. So as we wrap things up, Jeremy, I think we know where we're going with this, but I got to ask, are you going to trash Godzilla Minus One or treasure it?
Treasure, dude. This thing, again, I had no expectations for it. Wasn't planning on seeing it in theaters. Wasn't even necessarily going to watch it unless it was a convenience thing that happened. And it turned into, wow, okay, like people are really hyping this thing. Okay, they're saying that it's more in line with horror and then that Godzilla's terrifying. Well, that sounds intriguing and interesting to me. And now it is absolutely one of my favorite movies of the year, without a doubt. So yeah, of course, I'm going to treasure this thing.
I'm following lock and step with you. One of my favorites of the year, probably top 5. And ladies and gentlemen, I'm sure you're excited. We're going to be dropping our top movies of the year episode before the end of the year, hopefully, if we can make it happen. And I'm sure that Minus One will land on mine and Jeremy's list. But yeah,
very
100%
likely.
Loved this fucking movie. Go see it in theaters. Again, it's extending its theatrical run. If you haven't seen it, I'm sorry we spoiled it for you and you listened to the whole thing before that. But if you did see it and you listened, go see it again. I plan to if I can. I'm sure Jeremy would love to see it another time if he gets the opportunity. But thanks for listening to the Epic Film Guys podcast. We love you. If this is your first time, if it's you've been a long time listener, thank you so much. Leave us a review on iTunes or Spotify. It's even easier. Just leave us a star rating. Or check us out on social media at Epic Film Guys on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and literally all the other fucking things that we're on everywhere. But we're going to be busy this weekend. Jeremy's going to Steel City Con as of this. I can't say why.
Yeah, I think we'll have some fun stories to talk about after this.
Yeah, and I'm going to New York City with the wife to go look at the Christmas trees and all that stuff. But as always, I'm Justin.
I'm Jeremy.
We love you guys. Thank you so much for listening. And we always ask you to keep it creepy.
BFG, yeah!